Hello and welcome to my digital story. I really enjoyed this week's readings and topic about agency and autonomy because I really connected to my time as a classroom teacher and thought a lot about the different activities that I did with students and how this connected to the idea of student autonomy and student choice and agency. What are self-regulated learning, learning agency, and autonomy? Self-regulated learning is when students have the opportunity to plan out on their own or with support a project, and they set goals and a plan to reach and attain those goals. They self-monitor and self-reflect on their learning. Learner agency is where students have a choice and their voice is valued and validated. Ownership of their work. They plan the action to attain their goals and they choose what outcome they're looking for. And autonomy is where students are able to be the decision makers. They are offered choice in their work. It increases student independence and student control over their learning. These three sections of being a learner increase student adaptation, their problem-solving skills, and their intrinsic motivation. It also helps students interact more with depth and complexity within content area learning. It improves student academic performance, and it increases student independence, and it helps students know how and when to use their resources. I taught at a school that was Montessori and project-based learning, so my last year I actually used both methods in my classroom. In the school, people were either Montessori or project-based, depending on which grade level they were teaching, but for me I was asked to use both and integrate the best of both types of learning. So this was a really nice way of using like learner agency, self-regulated learning, autonomy in the classroom because project-based learning and Montessori really lend themselves to using those a lot in the classroom. One way that I used technology to support this was I had a student that was really struggling with writing, and he had some really great ideas. And he had an IEP, and part of the IEP was dictation. So he could dictate to me or to a classroom assistant what he wanted to write, and then we would actually be the scribe. So this was before my school had computers for the students to use. So he was in 5th grade, and if he wrote on his own, he could write 4 or 5 sentences, and that was a really, really big cognitive load for him. However, when we started having him, like, if he brainstormed with us and just talked to us while we wrote down his ideas, he would come up with these incredible ideas. And then when we got it on his IEP that we could be his scribes and he could dictate, he was able to produce these 5-6 paragraph essays without a problem, without tears, without frustration. The student had hated writing, and he would be the first to tell you that he hated it, that there was nothing good about writing, nothing good could come from writing. So it was really sad to see how hard it was for him and how much he hated it. And hate was the right word. He really did hate it. And when we got computers, we got it added to his IEP to use speech to text. So he was able to get his headphones, and he became a really good writer. And he was able to be more independent, and he was able to show what he knew, use that resource, and he started to become more motivated with writing. He started to choose to write more than was even necessary. When he had a choice whether to write something or create something, a lot of times he chose to write after that. And I noticed that when he was able to be independent and use this technology, this resource, he his academic performance improved. He was able to increase in depth and complexity within the content areas. He was able to problem solve, and he started automatically self-monitoring and self-reflecting and setting goals for himself with writing. Well, learning about technology enhanced methods, I did my own research to get a little bit more depth into some ideas about this. And I found 4 categories. Some were platforms that are that can be used to enhance student like self-regulated learning, learner agency, and autonomy. Some were multimedia tools, some were collaborative tools, and then others were apps. So some platforms are Canvas and Blackboard. um, Another one would be Google Classroom. I used Google Classroom in my 6th grade classroom, and students were able to find work that they needed to complete and information about projects. So they had some independence there, and they knew to get into Google Classroom and find what was required of them. Multimedia tools like Canva or podcasts or like presentation devices like Google or Microsoft Office. Collaborative tools like Word and Google Docs, where students can in real time connect with each other about their projects. And then apps like Seesaw, Padlet, and Flipgrid. When we're thinking about enjoyment and enrichment within education and technology, some things to consider are the skill development that will be achieved through the use of technology. There's meditation apps that can be used with students, with children, for adults. I had a friend who was a teacher that would use it with her classroom, and the students, it was just a few minutes every day, but it just helped them. It was after recess, and they would come in and they'd sit down on the rug, and they would use this meditation app just for breathing exercises to calm them as they came in. It helps them make connections to others. It helps people have an outlet for their creative expression, and you can even exercise with it. So, for example, I taught in Idaho, so we had really, really cold winters, and there were times when it was too cold for students to go outside for recess. And so I had lots of different activities the students could be doing in my classroom, and I was thankfully had a huge classroom, and that was set up for project-based learning for students to spread out and have their own space. So that made indoor recess easier. But one thing that my students loved was Go Noodle, and there was an exercise portion of it. I don't know if it's still available, but I know a few years ago it was, and students could use Go Noodle, and they could like run along. It looked like a path that was like lit up, and they were jumping over objects or crouching down under objects and dodging objects. So it worked on like agility and got students up and moving. And my students loved to use that during indoor recess as a way to get their energy out, knowing that that was their time to get their energy out before getting back to a more idle body movement for work. For my lesson plan, I was thinking about a project that I did with students when I taught 7th and 8th grade. I taught language arts and social studies, but then I also taught an elective for public speaking. As part of that, so we were doing this public speaking, and students were to choose their favorite book or movie and tell us why, and work on convincing us as their audience why we should read or watch that book or movie. Something that I found during my research and figuring out this lesson plan was something called Act to Speak, or ACTU Speak. And I wish it was something that I knew about when I was doing this, teaching this public speaking course, because students with Act to Speak can it increases. And it's interactive, and it has real-time feedback. It's gamified. It has vocabulary and grammar for students to work on. It has tasks for students to work on, so that it's individualized, and then it's collaborative. So students can use this to practice public speaking or presentation speaking. So something that I would love to have used this for was during this public speaking, we'd have a public speaking intro lesson on what we're looking for, expectations, what public speaking can be used for, and what outlets. And then we would talk about like how do we persuade somebody to do or read something that we're wanting them to do. And we would talk about persuasion and persuasive strategies. And then in this part of the lesson, students would choose their favorite book or movie, figure out why we should read it and why it's their favorite or watch it. And then they would practice with Act to Speak, and then we would have a day where they were presenting their public speaking and sharing their thoughts with us. Thanks for watching my digital story, and I hope to get some good feedback from you. Thanks.